And welcome to the CASAA update for the week of 7/25/2016. What's new and exciting, Alex, besides you traveling all over the place?
Yeah, August is going to be well, it's July, but
Right?
I think August is getting started early. Um, yeah, I'm all over the place. Just got back from VCC in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh.
Uh-huh.
It was a smaller event than some of the other VCCs, but still a good event. Kevin always does a good job of putting the advocacy front and center,
Nice.
and so we had a couple of good presentations over the weekend. Got to share a stage with Bill Godshaw from Smoke Free Pennsylvania, someone who has been, for those that don't know, Bill Godshaw has been working this issue for longer than vaping in the state of Pennsylvania, and I believe in front of the FDA as well.
Yes.
But and also Bill and some others were quick to inform us about the Allegheny County Board of Health, Department of Health,
Yeah.
working together to implement an indoor vaping ban
Yes.
in the county, which includes the city of Pittsburgh. And so we have an updated call to action for people who don't know. And the kind of cool thing about this is that this is about as early warning as it gets. Not all municipalities enjoy the same amount of process in passing one of these things,
Right.
but this is this is still at the level of the Board of Health. So essentially what's happened up until now is the Board of Health proposed the ordinance, they ran it by the kind of county attorneys or the legal committee or the whatever. They reported back and said, okay, the language is good, and then brought it back for a hearing, and there were, from what I understand, over 400 correspondences opposing this ordinance and zero in favor.
Wow.
And at the time, they sort of did this thing where they pass it out of that committee to kind of keep it alive, keep the discussion going. And at the time, they didn't schedule another public hearing. But it sounds like Bill and probably a couple other people raised enough of a ruckus that that was changed. And so now there is a public hearing on August 15th, I believe. I'm not looking at our update.
Yeah, but you have to make calls or emails regarding your testimony on the 14th by
Uh,
1
that,
p.m.
that's the deadline. The deadline to sign up to speak is 24 hours in advance of the hearing. So
Right.
if you do want to speak, or otherwise just submit testimony, the deadline is Sunday, August 14th by 1 p.m. And I would strongly recommend that people who want to speak coordinate with Bill,
Right.
or perhaps Steel City Vapors have been kind of organizing this. I don't have any contact information for them, but
Right.
use the Google, and they were actually instrumental in getting a bunch of. I think they might have generated 400 handwritten letters. I don't
Wow.
exactly know what that was, but so yeah, I believe they are in Pittsburgh, and so props to them for getting organized.
Sure.
But yeah, it's great to have the opposing testimony, but you don't want to overwhelm them with 50 people signed up to speak, and then everybody gets like a minute or two. So it's a good idea to coordinate with some of the people on the ground and make sure that everybody's testimony is going to be relevant and long enough.
Sure.
So that's that. But otherwise, that hearing room, which is in downtown Pittsburgh, I believe it is the largest hearing room in Pittsburgh City Hall. That should be packed. There should be, I believe, no less than 100 people showing up. So, in the meantime, you can take advantage of our call to action. We have a pre-written letter, which is fully editable. Which, I mean, you can delete the whole thing and just throw your personal story in there if you want.
Sure.
And email that, or use the contact information provided to email your own letter. And that's that. And then so yeah, this will probably take a few months. Right now, it's in the Board of Health Department, and then it moves on eventually to the full county council.
Okay.
So, like I said, we're just getting started with that one.
Okay.
But tell you,
Was Bill hot about the tax?
oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a ridiculous tax.
Everybody's hot about it, and that was certainly on everybody's mind. There's some further interpretation of the language. There are people working on it. So it's something important to remember. The legislature is in recess right now. There are some folks out there that have, on their own, started generating phone calls to specific lawmakers during this recess.
Sure.
And so that's what they're doing. And we are working closely with Pennsylvania SFATA
Right.
to kind of figure out where CASAA will fit in eventually with these efforts. But yeah, so there's some further interpretation of the law
Okay.
that kind of specifies exactly what's going to be taxed. And the current thinking is that the definition of electronic cigarette doesn't include, say, a mod or a tank or an atomizer sold individually.
Right.
Now, if you sell those things together, it fits the definition. But by itself, just the mod doesn't fit the definition. So the thinking is that this tax is actually on a fully completed Sig-alike or say an Ego starter kit where everything's sold together, or an all-in-one, and the e-liquid. It's not it's not much of a consolation, but it is something to consider. That I mean, any kind of crack where it may not be as disastrous as we think it is going to be. Potentially, that's a few more shops that may be able to survive it.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't save the day by any stretch of the imagination, but obviously, as far as we're concerned, the more people that can stay open, the better.
The better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my perspective on that is it's important for people to understand that and be able to review the law and review their own personal situation and see where they sit and whether or not they are actually if that changes something for 5 people, then awesome, and that's great. But at the end of the day, it is still a horrible tax. It is completely, I mean, it's just unworkable. And
Can you clarify the 5 years in jail thing for me, please, about this Pennsylvania tax?
So I took a little bit of license in sort of reporting that in our update. That is sort of the harshest penalty for one particular kind of violation, and that is the state determining if you intentionally try to evade the taxes.
Okay.
I mean, Well, that specifically can be applied, I think, mainly to manufacturers or retailers.
Sure.
That would be the most serious infraction. There's monetary penalties as well.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, everything, as far as I understand it, in Pennsylvania, things tend to have that monetary penalty as well
Okay.
as the potential for jail time.
Okay.
I think the steepest penalty for, say, a consumer or, according to Pennsylvania, an unclassified importer
Right.
is like up to a year in jail.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
So,
there's a lot of discussion about that too, and I'll clarify this. So, a lot of people are saying that there's just no way that the state is going to go after individual consumers for importing or even traveling back into the state with product that they haven't paid the tax on.
sure.
And on one hand, that's true. I mean, that the amount of resources the state would have to use is just, it would make it completely not worth it.
Right. But
To
you get pulled over for a traffic violation or something. I mean,
I mean, well, that comes down to the police officer. Like,
mhm.
do they really want to get into it? Is it really their jurisdiction? Is it, like, and
It's it's all gray area until it happens. You know what I mean?
exactly. And the example that I gave to people was, yeah, I get that it's too much for the state to really seriously consider enforcing it with the full force of whatever an agency is enforcing this. But here's an example. I lived in Lancaster County in Pennsylvania
Uh-huh.
for quite a while, and back in the '90s, um, it was sort of discovered that there was a blue law on the books, and it was no dancing on Sundays. And I'm fairly certain this law had been on the books since the 1700s,
Uh-huh.
and they never repealed it. Well, there is still a nightclub
Uh-huh.
downtown, and they would have their all ages shows on Sundays.
Hmm.
And there was also a curfew, so that was adhered to. But yeah, so no dancing on Sundays, and the local police department didn't start enforcing it until I guess the club, pissed somebody off in the city council,
Yep.
or pissed off the mayor's office. I can't remember what it was. So, even though it's a ridiculous law, it's still a law, and if somebody chooses to enforce it, they've got the law behind them. They can find a way,
Right.
even if it's to kind of satisfy some sort of personal vendetta. So,
Yeah, I mean, the law gets used for regulatory revenge all the time. I was reading something about that with code enforcement happening in a small town. So it does happen. You know, it
yeah,
happens all the time. No one's above corruption,
yeah.
unfortunately. So I see Senator Johnson is going for his third round with the FDA.
I have to admit, I haven't.
No, no, no. I mean, I'm I'm surprised A that he got a response, and B that he's going for a third round with these guys. Um,
Well,
Go ahead.
it's part of the process.
Hmm.
Um,
Sure.
this has been kind of what I suspected, is that it's like the power company sending you a warning and then a 30-day notice and then so on. It's just
Sure.
this is just part of the process. So, and I believe, I don't know how many letters. I think it's three. I think he's reached the limit here, and then we'll be working on. I believe the correct term is subpoena. He will
Hmm.
subpoena members of the FDA to testify in front of the committee.
Sure.
As far as I know, I think that's
Procedure. Yeah.
that's procedure, and that's, I believe, in the works.
Right.
So yeah, and I do know that a couple that people have been sort of people got a message to go ahead and start pressuring Senator Johnson to call for a formal legislative inquisition. It's actually subpoena. That's what, as I understand it, you would be issuing a subpoena. That's the
Right.
legal term.
Sure.
Um, there's inquisition is not the word. Um, so, but our feeling on that is that we don't really want to bother him right now. He's a
Sure.
friend of the vaping, so let's keep him a friend of the vaping. There may come a time, I believe, in September or
Yep.
early September when things re-adjourn,
Sure.
that it may become necessary to send him some very polite and kindly worded messages to either offer support or maybe urge him politely to subpoena the FDA
Yeah.
to call a hearing. But yeah, I would sort of recommend that people not overwhelm the office. It's
Sure.
fine if you want to send him, a heartfelt letter saying thank you and keep up the good work. But we don't want to bombard him with
Sure.
stuff right now.
Well, I
Um,
think he's got other stuff on his plate now. He's trying to collect for his reelection campaign too, and
yeah, he's
that's
trying to keep his job.
yeah, that's coming up soon, and he's lost a lot of support, actually, a lot of monetary support. So, um, yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm sure he's concerned with other things as well as the FDA.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
So, um, so yeah, that's
Oh,
that.
no, HR 2058 picked up 3 new.
Oh yeah, it's been a couple weeks since we've done this, so
Yeah.
yeah, we added 3 more co-sponsors,
Hmm.
which is always good news. Um, and for what it's worth, these are people that are also, I would assume, likely to put some support behind the Cole Bishop Amendment when and if that comes to some sort of vote.
Yeah.
And behind the scenes, we're going to need people working to keep that in the appropriations bill.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, so, uh, yeah, I don't have the names in front of me, but
Tom McClintock, California. Um, Todd Young, Indiana. Mick Mulvaney, South Carolina.
awesome. Yeah, and we have our thank you campaign up for that as well. So if you live in any of those districts, if any of those guys are your representative, please send them a thank you note. They like getting thank you notes from constituents,
Yes, they do. That's a big thing. They love it.
and it helps keep the conversation alive.
Hmm. It does. Thank you letters are always nice. It makes people feel good. So yeah, it's an
Yep.
awesome thing. Is that about it for this week, you think, Alex?
Pretty much. This
Okay.
coming weekend, I will be in Tacoma, Washington. The Pink Lung Brigade is a part of a couple of. Sorry, that was probably really loud. Pink Lung Brigade is a couple of. I think one's a fundraiser. The other one's sort of a consumer night at a shop out there,
Hmm.
Obsidian Vape. And so I'm primarily going out to hang out with Washington advocates because we haven't really developed those connections yet, and
Right.
we need to be able to work with them
Hmm.
and also just lend some support out there as well.
Yeah.
So and I haven't really hung out in. I don't think I've ever been to Washington State, so it'll be
Hey.
a good weekend trip.
Yeah. Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you, Alex, for everything you do, and thank you for coming on. I know you've been really busy, so thank you for everything.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
It's a pleasure as always. And we'll see you maybe next week or the week after.
I'll probably be traveling, so might as well.
Okay. Or not, or you'll just hear me give my amazing CASAA update, which is like 7 minutes long. So, thank you again, Alex,
All right.
and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
See ya.
See ya.